Hey y'all, Fred here. Thanks so much for joining me. Today we are going to do some cut testing on this old Medford replica knife. This knife was actually given to the channel by John Emerson, aka the Tri-Fire, one of our oldest and one of my favorite subscribers. You know, you don't ever like to play favorites with your kids, do you? But John's been a fantastic supporter of this channel. He's loaned me several knives to review here, which you guys have seen on this channel, and he actually donated this knife to the channel for us to give away. So by the time you're watching this video, at least one person out there, well, one person out there will in fact own this knife, which means at least one person out there will be interested in watching the rest of this video to see how it does in the cut test. So thanks so much, John. I really appreciate you for everything, and especially for giving this out for our contest. This is a replica knife, as I may or may not have mentioned yet. This is an all steel beast of a knife. However, that being said, it is actually still pretty functional. We are going to do this testing. In case you haven't seen before, we use our redneck rating scale, which is anywhere from 1, it cuts like a spoon, up to 10, could skin a catfish before it even knew it was caught. So we're going to cut roughly the same amount. This is not a fully objective test. I try to cut about the same amount of cardboard. We do the same number of rope and hose cuts, and then some push cutting through some harder wood and see how that works out. We're going to test the blade with our extremely scientific paper cutting test after each one. I'm going to give it a rating based on where we are at that point in the test. So if you got to bail out early, please throw your buddy a thumbs up. If you're not already, hit that subscribe notification bell. That certainly helps little guys like us out on the YouTubes. Let's talk about some size comps. It's really hard to get a sense of this knife. This is a large knife, in case you hadn't been able to figure that out. And until you start putting other knives next to it, it really is hard to get that sense of just how big this thing is. This thing dwarfs, obviously, the Para 2, or the PM2, sorry, in this case the 𝗕𝗂𝗍𝗏, which is a fantastic alternative. How about some other knives? Here's another fairly full-size knife, the old 𝗬𝗏𝗀𝗏. This is a very small-size knife, the 𝗧𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗁𝗏. You can see this thing is just about the same length if you put it all the way butt to butt. That little attitude adjuster is a little bit longer than even the 𝗬𝗏𝗀𝗏 here. What else do we got? We always like to do, in case you've got the 𝗬𝗲𝗡 Vision FG, you can see it dwarfs that. How about the Pyrite Light? You can pretty much imagine it's going to dwarf all of these knives because it's a big old beast of a knife, right? There you go. Let's talk about the ergonomics. Ergonomics are not the best. I mean, it is what it is. You have to understand what you're getting here. This is a big, giant, heavy steel knife. It comes in at 10 ounces. However, you can still legitimately carry and use this knife. The lock bar access is very easy to get to, but the downside of that is it's a little bit sharp. Not sharp like it's going to cut you. There's no sharp edges anywhere on that thing, but it's just, it's a little bit pokey. The jimping is extremely aggressive. Again, not sharp, no cutting, kind of slicing edges, but is very deep, and I can't imagine how that's going to be comfortable when it comes time to really bear down on this thing. We're going to find out. Even just having your thumb there, if you're pushing really hard into that jimping for any length of time, you're going to end up with you know, some dents in your hands there. So not like hand melting ergonomics, but it is a solid steel handle. You know, the pocket clip is huge and somewhat pokey, so I expect that may not be the most comfortable thing. However, I'll say it, the springiness is beautiful on this pocket clip. It's freakishly long. Don't know why they felt like they needed to do that, but this is a replica. It's somewhat true to the original. I don't think that they actually use this same pocket clip anymore. I think they've replaced that on the real deals there. So it's a little bit big and pokey. However, here's one redeeming grace. This actually is a finger choil, and because of the size of it, you know, it looks like a sharpening choil, but you can fit a fingertip very comfortably in there. Because that blade is angled out, you don't have to really worry that it's going to cut you. So when I get down to some cardboard cutting, I think this is actually going to be pretty darn slicey, despite how thick this blade is, which is crazy thick out here, right? At any rate, I still think it'll do well. This is obviously, I didn't even mention, a compound tanto with a deep hollow through here. Pretty cool on that. 17 thousandths behind the edge. So for as big and crazy bulky as this knife is, it gets down pretty thin and slicey. A little bit of a rounded tip here. I'm looking forward to seeing if I can just pop through my sisal rope just using that tanto tip. Obviously strong, heavy-duty, thick beast of a knife. You can do a little bit of a choked up, almost a pull cut that way, you would certainly want to use this secondary tip right there, you know, to slice using that tip, and you can hold the knife in this position. That is not terribly uncomfortable, and I'm not worried about getting cut down there. So that's pretty good. You could certainly pull cut if you needed to, choke back for any kind of deep push cut slicing, but again, slicing cardboard all day going this angle, I'm going to have my finger up here. So honestly, for what it is and as big as it is, it's actually not terrible in terms of the ergonomics. This is what I'm going to call a fun knife. Like, this is 10 ounces, right? But I mean, what's 10 ounces? A little over half a pound. Can you put it in your pocket if you're wearing, you know, a decent pair of jeans or certainly some heavy duty work pants? Absolutely. Is it going to like kill you to carry this all day long? No, it's not going to kill you to carry it. Probably don't want to have much else in your pocket because it just takes up so much space in there. But, you know, take it to work one day. Oh, look at that. Got it flipped out on the first try. It's actually loosening up. So by the time whoever wins this gets it, it may be loosened up enough that it takes some wrist and some thumb. The problem is this is so smoothed out right here, there's nothing to grip. Your thumb just wants to slide right off of that. It's just too smooth right there. But you saw me do it twice. There you go. It can actually be flipped out. Again, fun knife. Take it to work one day just to show your buddies and have a little fun with them at the shop or wherever it is that you work. And that'll be fun on that. All right, starting sharpness. Where are we at on this thing? I think this is, I rated this a 9 out of a 10. I mean, that's almost a 10. That's smooth. There are no snags. It's just not quite a laser beam. Even this little tanto tip here, let me see if I can get a little cutting action going with that. You can see even that thick tanto tip is sharpened up pretty well. Certainly slicey enough. I mean, slicey is what you would expect for this knife to be. Fantastic on that. We're going to start it at a 9 out of 10 on the sharpness scale. So let's get over to the cutting table and start the cutting.
All right, as always, we have about 400 square inches, 396 in case you're keeping score at home. I'm going to keep this first little board that we're cutting here at normal speed. So you can see it's slicing through pretty well. I mean, it's a funny thing, this big heavy knife, and you can choke up forward with that little finger / sharpening choil, which is plenty big enough for a finger. The hollow blade is slicing really well. It gets dull. We'll see that in a minute when we go to cutting the paper. But I'm going to tell you, throughout this whole test, this knife felt like it stayed sharp. So for as big as it is, and look right here, even in this vertical cutting, I always like to do that at the end, this thing feels solid. I wouldn't mind breaking down some cardboard boxes with this thing all day. That'd be no problem at all, really. I think it would hold up to that task just fine. It's that slicey hollow ground blade that really makes it feel good. Feels comfortable in the hand, no big issues. Of course, I don't have to really grip it extra hard. It's like the weight of the knife gives it momentum that just pulls it right through the cuts. So far, so good. You know, as far as cutting and breaking down cardboard, kind of my goal with this whole test is, you know, this is a knife. It's not just built to look fun or be big and bulky. This is a knife you could absolutely take with you to work and use it for really a good full hard days of work, and especially at the price, you know, for this steel knife. But now we've got to find out, does that supposed 60 HRC D2 steel, is it going to hold up? And you can see right here already, we're into snags already, and they are fairly significant. I mean, enough to kind of stop the flow of that cut. And I'm really trying to gauge it here. Are there multiples? How bad is it? I mean, it didn't like take chips out of the blade or something. No cardboard's going to do that to even a moderately heat-treated D2 steel. But we went from a 9 to a 6 on that first test. So I always like to add these in the draw cutting. I'm using that second tanto tip. You can see it's not going to be really good for cutting curves, but using that secondary edge bevel, man, piece of cake. If you're just doing draw cuts all day long, no problem. Absolutely great. Now's where we get to an interesting choice, because there's no belly on this blade. It's a flat tanto blade on the bottom. There's a little bit of belly on the tanto tip, but you're not going to cut straight through that hose with just that. So watch what I'm doing here. I'm using that second bevel, that second corner right at the junction of the tanto, and it pierced right through with ease with that rubber hose. So again, as long as you kind of know how you're doing it, piece of cake again, no worries. And now that little tanto tip there, it's pretty sharp, man. You'll see that throughout this test. We'll test it again in a minute. That tanto tip could break through easily. Cable ties, twine, whatever you need it to cut through. I usually don't see much of a loss of edge retention after the hose cuts. It's more just how well can it go through that kind of a material. So we're still at a 6 after the hose, no problem there. That's about what you'd expect. Now, dilemma number 2, am I going to cut with the tanto tip of this thing or the flat hollow ground part? So I'm going to start here with the tanto tip. As you can see, there's a little bit of a belly, so I can rock back and forth a little bit, but it's just so thick of an edge. So now I'm like, okay, well, maybe I want to go. So I started to do the hollow grind, and I'm like, nope, I can't do that flat on the table. So I wanted to do a few cuts, just really trying the tanto tip, see how well that would work. You know, can I rock through it? And you can see it does. It's not, you know, going to be slicey. It's a pretty thick tanto tip. But now if you put it up on the board, now I can use that hollow ground portion, the flat edge of the blade. And you can see here, once I get it figured out, it's going to start popping through this rope nice and cleanly, which is, you know, what we're looking for is that clean rope pop. Just put a little bit of muscle into it and it pops right through. So the hollow ground edge, you raise the rope up, fantastic. But now I'm going to start with the tanto tip and see, okay, well, I tried to cut a little bit of rope with it. Did that do any edge damage to the tanto tip? No, we're good to go on that. Now we're just going to check the rest of the blade to see, have we changed much? It actually looked like it cut pretty well through that piece of paper, but it's still snagging up. I'm speeding up the video here. I'm just trying to see, is it any worse than it was previously? So what I've decided at this point in time is no, we're still at a 6, so all is good. Let's move on to the wood cutting test here. In the wood cutting test, we're always really looking more about ergonomics, although I'm feeling and seeing here that it has really good bite into the wood, despite the fact that it's dulled down to what I'm going to call a 6 on the sharpness scale. It's still biting into the wood. So nice hollow ground blade. I got to give him a lot of credit that it definitely has good bite. You can see I was using the saber grip there, and look at what that jimping will do to your thumb. However, that's the least of all evils. The pocket clip also sticks you in the hand like, you know, you thought it might have done. But now we're going to try the hammer grip, and that's actually a softer part. That webbing of your hand, softer than my thumb. So that's just a no-go at all. That big jimping sticks right up into the webbing of your hand when you really try to bear down. So not comfortable in the hammer grip for hard use. Let's see if we did any additional damage to the edge. It's feeling pretty much more or less about the same as where we've been throughout this test all along. We don't often see too much more damage after doing the wood cutting, but again, it's really all mostly about ergonomics more than anything. How does it feel in different kind of grips and different usage scenarios? I think I'm going to give it somewhere between a 5 and a 6. I'll end up at a 5.5, we'll call it, on that. All right, now on to the stropping portion of today's events. I've got this great new strop with the CBN diamond bonded stroppy stuff, and this is actually a 16 micron, the brown side 16 micron, and then when I flip it over is a 6 micron. And you'll notice, if you're paying attention at all, that I'm stropping both the flat edge and the tanto tip separately, which is something you need to do. You can't just swipe it from one edge and go straight into the next. You'll end up rounding off that tanto corner right there between the two tips where they come together, those beveled edges. So you have to treat them like two different knives. So you don't want to just roll from one right into the other. Even when you're just stropping them, eventually you will turn it into just a rounded off corner. That's not typically what you want. Certainly, since we're giving this knife away, it's definitely not what I want to do for that next guy. Interestingly enough, so as soft as it felt like, as quick as it got dull in the cardboard cutting test, it didn't actually strop back. I gave it a pretty good bit of stropping on both sides with both the 16 and the 6 micron. I certainly could have done a little bit more, but we're really, I think, I'll give it a 7. There's still noticeable snags in here. So let's dive into the end results, and we'll come up and see where we finished up on this thing. All right, so I know this is impossible to read unless you're looking at a big screen, so I appreciate your patience with me. I'll go through this pretty quickly. This is the Medford Praetorian Replica, all steel. It said it was a D2 steel. 60 HRC is what they have on the listing. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to buy that on this one. You never know what you're going to get with that. If it was a good, well-treated perfectly done D2 steel. Knife Steel Nerd said that would rate about a 5 on their score. So that helps you, know the difference between, where does a D2 compared to an M390 compared to a 154 cm, right? Again, all things being perfect. I did not sharpen the knife first. It started at about a 9, I'm going to call it. On the sharpness scale, we did 396 inches, square inches, same as more or less the 400 we always do. And after the cardboard, we were down to a 6. That's actually not uncommon at all. It's not uncommon, especially for knives that I don't sharpen first, on my own work sharpener. Very often go down 3 points or more in some cases. So pretty common to see that kind of a drop. So we're down to a 6 from a 9 after the cardboard. We did our 3 hose cuts. Hose cuts were interesting. Again, when I used that tanto beveled corner, the bottom beveled edge, but where the 2 beveled edges meet, the sharpened edges, that pierced nicely, nice and easy, right through that hose. It was kind of a V-shaped wedge to drive down through that reinforced rubber hose, made it surprisingly good and easy to cut. So just another interesting observation of really the usefulness of this knife into different situations. That didn't really change the overall sharpness very much. We're still at a 6. I did our 10 rope cuts, tried the 3 with the tanto tip. It's just a little too thick of a wedge. It's a very sharp tip, but it's just not thin enough, slicey enough to really poke down. But you saw it. We cut through those 3 pieces of rope. If that's what you had to do, but that would certainly do the job. Then we switched to raising it up on the board, and that hollow portion of that knife, probably one of the best results out of this whole thing, was just how easily that hollow ground blade did just pop cleanly through the rope. That was very good to see, and again, just a great indication that this could be a pretty good user knife, especially, given the money, given the size and everything else. We'll talk about that. But it definitely can be a user kind of a knife. We did the 10 rope cuts, dropped it down about a 5.5, we'll call it. The wood was really, as much as anything, an ergonomics test. And, this is not going to be one of your better ergonomics in terms of how far knives go. It's a steel handle. There's lots of pokey, sharp points on it. The jimping is crazy, oversized, and aggressive. If you're going to bear down hard on this knife, you probably want to be wearing gloves or just not plan on having to do a lot of really hard grip cutting with that thing. It's really the jimping more than anything else. The pocket clip was probably bearable, although you did certainly notice it when you were gripping on there. All that being said, after the wood, we didn't change the sharpness, still at a 5, and we dropped it about 19 strokes per side, only came back to a 7. So now I'm at this torn place. I started to mention this earlier, in that they claim the HRC was 60, and a 60 on a D2 is pretty good HRC score. So you would expect that to hold an edge a little bit better than it did. So the fact it didn't hold the edge better, I mean, it was an average, but from a 9 to a 6, it's hard to believe that this is a 60 HRC, so I'm going to say it's probably a little softer than that. But then I get to stropping, and you would also think a softer D2 would strop back more easily too. You'd be back at a 10 after, a little bit of decent stropping. Again, brand new strop and fresh compound on there. Haven't hardly stropped any knives on it, so it's not worn out or anything like that. So a bit of a toss-up there. Overall, I'm going to say, listen, this was better than expected. This is a fun knife, a big, beefy, overbuilt monster knife, but not so big you can't actually carry it. The pocket clip is functional as far as pocket clip goes. It's long and oversized, but it has perfect tension. It's definitely going to hold the knife well in your pocket. You're not going to get a lot else into your pocket, but if you're wearing, decent pair of jeans or certainly anything heavier duty than that, you can absolutely take this thing to work, have a little fun with the guys at work, and still expect to get some serious work done. The hollow ground came, moderately sharp. I've sharpened it back up, by the way, for whoever gets this knife. I have brought it back up to at least a 9, probably a 10. It's pretty slicey. But, this is a fun knife. It's not expensive. You can, have a little fun at work with it with the guys and still actually have it do good work. That was really the big outcome of all this. It gets dull a little bit faster than you want, but listen, it didn't get dull any faster than any of the 14C blades that I have tested so far. Now, again, all those have factory edges too, but they all did the same or worse than this one on the test in terms of that goes. Hollow grind really saves the day. It is fully functional. Great rope cutting. Once you raised it up on that board, that hollow ground just popped right through it. You can use that second beveled edge on certain cuts. You can do draw cuts with the beveled edge. You don't have to raise it up really high. with that tanto edge there. That's what I was trying to say. The ergonomics are about what you'd expect, right? The jimping is rough, you know, choked forward with that finger forward position. Man, I could slice cardboard all day long with that. So I'm pretty happy with all of those results. In the big picture, you know, it's a fun, cool knife that you can absolutely take to work with you and have a good, fun day at work. So I'm going to give this about a 5 out of 10 on the edge, which is average. Like, I don't give fake scores where nobody gets below a 5, right? You know, if it's a 2, I'm going to give it a 2. So 5 is dead right in the middle. It's about what you'd expect from a Chinese replica D2 steel knife. ADC-wise, I'm going to give it about a 4. And again, absolutely perfect, no problem. Take this thing to work and use it and have fun with it, but it's not a knife you're going to want to carry. Obviously, for the size, there's, you know, no hand melting ergonomics. It's going to be rough to do some hard cutting with, so you're not going to want to carry this all the time. But for a fun day or two at work, just to have fun with it and know you can get some serious work done, absolutely all day long. Let me know, have any of y'all picked up this knife? You know, there's so many of these replicas out there. They're just everywhere in the market. And for, you know, 20, 30 bucks, you can get a fun little overbuilt knife, have something in your collection, just, you know, to have a little fun with your friends with. Let me know what y'all have seen or if you've had an experience with this knife. I'm always curious to hear what y'all think. Otherwise, thanks so much. If you haven't already, I would appreciate it. Make my world if you would hit that subscribe notification bell, throw me a thumbs up. That stuff helps us with the YouTube algorithms. Otherwise, whoever gets this knife in the drawing, I don't know yet. Whenever this video comes out, we'll probably have drawn, I mean, we may or may not have drawn by the time this video comes out. So whoever got this, know that I resharpened it back for you, touched up the edge, didn't like reprofile it or anything, but definitely got it back to full-blown slicey. You'll see that in the giveaway video once again. Thanks y'all so much for sticking with me. I appreciate you guys as always. Looking forward to talking to you soon. Take care.